What's going on, everyone, and welcome to HTF Off-Season, where the grind don't stop. I'm Nick Cohen, and we have an amazing episode for you today. It's 4th of July, so, I have my Buckies represented, my America represented, and we're going to be talking about NBA draft recap, free agency so far, and then UFC 303. But just to give you a little bit of a recap of what's been going on in some other leagues in hockey. Macklin Celebrini has officially been picked number one overall by the San Jose Sharks. We all knew that would happen. And then also the Nashville Predators in free agency have just been going crazy. They found the infinite money glitch. They signed Steven Stamkos. They signed Marsh Salt. They're going crazy. And then our Stanley Cup champion, Florida Panthers, have re-signed Sam Reinhart to like an 8-year deal. They are going to be set up, looking for another Stanley Cup final back to back. And then in the WNBA, the New York Liberty, the Connecticut Sun, the Minnesota Lynx, Seattle Storm, and Las Vegas Aces are the only teams above 500. They're killing it. Everyone else, not so much. And I'm not going to tell you about MLB because a little bit sneak peek, we do have an MLB special hosted by Matthew Brecker next week for you. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for this episode. HTF Off-Season starts right now. And we are back, starting it off with NBA draft. That happened about a week, maybe two ago by now. It was an eventful draft. I'm joined by Andrew Montana and Patrick Previty. We're gonna, first question. First pick of the draft, Zachary Risachet. Should he have been the pick?
I'm gonna just go with maybe you pick the guy who wants to play for your team. I don't think that they could have done much if Sarr doesn't want to work out. Now, I don't know what's going through his head, okay? I've never seen an NBA player say, I want to go to a team that's more dysfunctional, doesn't have any pieces around me, and I'm gonna have like the entire load on my back to at the start of this season. And I've never seen that before, but Alex Sarr, more power to him. He decided he was like, I'm gonna go to the Wizards instead of the Hawks. And I would like, in my opinion, what are the Hawks supposed to do? And also, I think the way that Klingon fell, I think that most people around like the front offices didn't really have him rated all that high. So I think he was in a lot of mock drafts to be in the possible like 1-2 range at the very start of the draft season. He dropped, so it was essentially just between those two guys, and I think they just chose the guy who actually worked out with them.
Well, and theoretically, like if they weren't very high on Risachet and Sarr just did not want to go to them, should they have maybe looked to trade it? Or, probably there was just no trade suitors, but like, you know, could they have looked to trade it? Obviously they didn't. But I would think in that situation, you would think about it at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I'll agree with you, Nick, on that one. If the number one overall prospect isn't going to your team, there's not much that you can do with that pick. So use the power that you have with the first overall pick to get a better suitor, maybe someone like, just depending on where everyone goes, but just someone that can fit in more with what Atlanta has. Obviously somebody that can maybe fit in with Trae Young. I don't know, like a John Collins would have been crazy if he was on Atlanta. But yeah, I think they should have traded that pick away, used its power, and I don't know. They could have done this a little better, the Hawks.
Yeah, similar to what you just said. If the number one prospect, if you're not picking the number one prospect, it's a reach. Like just plain and simple.
Yeah.
And so moving on to number two, I'm gonna take that over because I think the Wizards won this draft. They got Alex Hart and they got him at number two. They didn't have to trade up for number one if they really, really wanted him. They got him at two, and that's not all that they did. They traded Denny Advia, who I'm a fan of. I think he's a good young player. Um, but it kind of needed to be done, and they got good value. They got Malcolm Brogdon, who is not in his glory days anymore, but
He's good. He's good. I know, yeah, he's good.
I mean,
I
maybe
like
for the
him.
Wizards, he'll be
Doesn't exactly
okay,
fit their
but
timeline.
yeah,
Nothing fits their timeline.
if they're in a
That's
rebuild,
fair.
why are we getting like a 20? How old is he? Maybe 28 now. I don't know. Maybe
I
older.
think he
I low-key
Malcolm
think he's
Brogdon.
30.
Yeah,
Malcolm Brogdon,
he
I
was
think
an
he was
old
drafted
rookie.
in I think he was drafted in Kyrie's. No, he wasn't.
No, he
He
was
won
like
Rookie
No,
of the Year.
he
Like,
won Rookie of the Year, so it wasn't Kyrie.
yeah,
Yeah, he's definitely up there in
he's
age.
31. He turns 32
31.
this year.
ridiculous. But so they
So
got him. I'm
2012.
not moved by that piece, but they did get pick 14, which we'll get to who they chose at pick 14. And then they got a 2029 first round pick and then 2028 and 2030 second round picks. And then they still later in the draft, they got Keyshawn George out of Miami, who I think was a pretty good prospect and he'll fit what the Wizards need. And so I think they won that draft. They lost Denny Advia again, a good young piece. He was the best player on that team, maybe, competing with Kuzma, but I think he might have been better. And yeah, I think they won that. And any
I
argument
think
against that?
I think that's a fair assessment. They got a lot of pieces that they wanted to build around. I think for a team like the Wizards, you just want to find the direction. They could have ended up like the Pistons and drafted another guard. And then at that point, you're just like, what are we doing? I think that they have a point or a direction that they want to go. Thought it was funny that when everybody is selling in this draft, they decided to buy. So sometimes, you got to be a trailblazer. You got to, zig when they zag, like do something different. So I didn't mind it. I think what are you gonna get from this draft? Because it was just so weak, or at least valued at such a weak point. But I like that they found a direction.
Good. And so moving on to John Salon, viewed pretty widely as a reach for the Hornets. It's just kind of questionable because they they're obviously not a great team. They were picking top 10. Um, but he's viewed as like the biggest project in the draft. And so why would the Hornets of all teams take that manager?
I'm not sure, dude. I'm not sure. There are so many other guys to pick up. Um, but I don't know, man. This caught me by surprise watching the draft. We were in our little hotel, if you remember from last week. But yeah, we were watching, we were about to go out, and then they picked I don't even remember. It's still on. I know you just said it, but I
Yeah.
forgot already.
Yeah, he's
Um,
not a memorable player.
I shot my laptop like so quickly. Nevertheless, shout out to the French for getting three Frenchmen in the top six. I know we're celebrating 4th of July, but that's another red, white, and blue that should be celebrating right now. But I really don't know. He's a solid power forward. But I just don't. I really don't see it. Like
In a
you
weak
can
draft
you can
class, I don't think he's worthy of the sixth pick.
yeah, you can tell I'm struggling to come up with words because I was doing a lot of research on a lot of guys. He was not one that I was looking at, like
Yep.
especially for like this high in the draft. So I'm kind of loss of words, I guess that's the best way to put it. Not like, oh, but like I
Right.
literally don't know what to say about him. I don't
Kind
know
of
much
flipping
about
the
him.
switch, though, someone that I personally was very high on. I thought of him as a top three player in the class, Donovan Clingan. And a lot of other teams thought maybe he could go at three, definitely four, not four, but maybe five. He falls all the way to the Trailblazers. And it's not like going at number seven is that crazy of a fall, but like he still fell a little bit.
For him,
And,
yeah.
Oh yeah, from where he was initially projected.
like,
Mhm.
how did the Trailblazers get him at seven? Like, they hit that pick out of the park.
So I just want to bring up the fact that I don't think they did so unless they're planning on doing something with DeAndre Ayton or Robert Williams. I know Time Lord is injured. He's struggled through injury, especially since leaving the Celtics. But if they're gonna keep three centers, not just centers, but centers that
True
can't really
centers.
play power forward, exactly. Yeah. Maybe Rob Williams like occasionally gets bumped to the floor, but no, like these are three fives, three centers. I don't get it. So when Charlotte picked Salon, I was like, okay, where in the world is Donovan Clingan gonna go? Because Portland has all those centers. Then at the eighth pick, San Antonio's got Wemby. You got that. At the ninth, I was like, okay, maybe Memphis goes with him because like Jaren Jackson, like a 4 or 5 kind of thing, so you can get him. They got Zach Edey, which is like a Walmart Temu version of Donovan Clingan. And so I'm looking down the list and I was like, dude, this guy could fall based on team needs. He could fall kind of far if he wasn't picked by Detroit, the worst freaking front office in the NBA. I don't know why they picked a guard. Not to discredit Ron Holland, but like Donovan was right there. I really don't get that. I really don't.
Well, they do have Jalen Duren, so
I mean, yeah, but like you've got so many guards, and now you just got Tim Hardaway Jr., who, by the way, feels so bad for him. He just went from the finals to the worst team in the league.
Well,
Um,
he's not all that himself, but
I mean, he can be sometimes like he's good when the team's winning by 20. We saw that in game four. But yeah, he's you got four guards. I mean, granted, Tim Hardaway Jr. is not like a point guard type of guy to run the ball, but like you got so many guys now. You got a fourth.
So you mentioned the Spurs at 8. Patrick, you think the Spurs won the draft, and I'm not disagreeing, but kind of a questionable move. At 8, they did draft Rob Dillingham and traded him. So
Mhm.
defend yourself.
Okay, so this is going to go into some of the other things that we've talked about today. Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit before I talk about the Spurs because I had a few things I wanted to say. Charlotte, I think, was initially either they were going to take a big swing or they were going to trade. I think for Portland, they are probably going to have to trade DeAndre Ayton or give up somebody else. They didn't. They just took the best guy available in Klingon, and I also think that the Memphis Grizzlies were going to like try to shoot up the draft to go get Klingon too. So I think a lot of teams had certain guys ranked high enough on their board to say, look, we want this guy on our team and we want to invest this pick in him. And then I think for about the rest of the draft, you had the Thunder, they weren't really in the mindset and the cap space situation to want to pay another young guy and develop him. So they drafted a guy who tore his ACL and he's not going to play next year. Like you have some of these teams making these interesting decisions where they're not like investing in these young players in this draft because they just don't have high grades on them. And it looks super unusual when it's in the lottery and you're seeing a team take a guy who's, known in college, but look, he's not projected to be like all that great. So, like with the Spurs, they had their fourth pick. They had Stephon Castle. He's completely different from Rob Dillingham, and they said, "Look, we're going to take him, and we're going to have him be the point guard, a defensive guy, um, on the perimeter." With Wimby. Now, I thought that they were going to take Klingham, but they said Castle's our guy. And I think that you have to stick by that. And you say, even if he's going to be available at 8, we're not going to move up or down, and we're not going to try to go get Klingham as well. I like that they did that. They didn't really just like get all that crazy about like trying to move and get them both. That would have been two defensive guys. And for Wimby, I think like at that point, what are you really doing? So then they go get Dillingham, and then they know that he's got some sort of value, and they make a trade with the Timberwolves, who by 2031, I know it sounds ridiculous, but the Spurs are playing the long game. Last time, whenever they were trying to build their franchise up and they had some of these old players, they made a move to go get Kawhi Leonard, and they kind of traded away an already established piece. So they're just trying to like do the two timeline things, and they're the only team I've ever seen be successful with that. So what they did was they got a pick in the 2030s, which they are in a pick swap, which they believe is going to be much higher than theirs because they're going to be competing for championships. Hopefully by then, that's what they think. And they're going to get it from a team in the Minnesota Timberwolves who Cat will be in his 15th, 16th year. He will be in his like mid late 30s. Or I would say mid 30s. He might not even be on the Timberwolves. I think Rudy Gobert is going to be retired. He'll be gone. And Anthony
Cat could be
Edwards could
retired.
still, yeah.
He could
Yeah,
be.
Cat could be retired. Yeah, and Anthony Edwards, he definitely could be on another team. I mean, he could have already like had a great legacy in Minnesota in the next 6 years, but he could actually end up being gone. So you have no idea where that pick is going to go. But you get a pick swap, and you get potentially a pick that could end up in the lottery, or you could get lottery luck with that Minnesota pick while you are at the absolute peak with Wemby and Stephon Castle, who you've had a high grade on. I think they stuck by their guns, and that's why I thought that they won. Or at least they
Patrick, you're
didn't
so
lose
good
it
at
as much
this.
as other people thought.
Yeah, you've convinced me. I mean, um, I'm not
Like,
gonna
like,
argue against
damn.
that. Yeah, and
He's
you
so
did
good at this.
right, and you did already briefly mention Zach Edey. You know, most hated on player in the draft, pretty undoubtedly. I don't quite know if that's totally deserved. Get to you in
I
just a
agree,
second,
Andrew.
Andrew.
No, no,
But
I was just gonna,
I,
can I ask why? Like I
yeah,
don't know.
I
I've
don't know
just seen
either
him like do well at
because
Purdue.
he's good.
Is it just like he can't jump? I don't
That's
know.
why people don't like LeBron, right? Because he's good.
My aunt or my great aunt says she doesn't like Messi because he wins too much. So I'm like, okay, if Colombia, our nationality, if Colombia does well in the Copa so well that we win everything, are you not gonna like us anymore?
Right. Yeah. Well, why would someone from like Minnesota, a Vikings fan, not like Tom Brady? They don't play very often. It's because he's good. He won like every single year. So I think that's why Zach Edey was the best college basketball player for 2 years in a row.
If you know why Zach Edey's hated on, leave it in the comments. for my own
Please
education.
do.
I have a
Yes.
guess. I have a
Yeah.
guess. I think
Go
it's
for it.
because you can't do what Zach Edey does. Like you can
True.
technically, if you
Like
worked hard
physically?
enough, yeah, if you worked hard enough, you could like shoot like Steph Curry. Like, yeah,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
technically, if
There
you
we go.
had
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Good God,
15
if I
years
was
of work,
7'4",
but yeah,
dude.
you can't grow,
Yeah.
or at least I can't anymore, to 7'4". So
So
He had
he
a
went
chance,
to
but he missed
Memphis.
it.
Right. Zach Edey went to Memphis, and I think that's going to be a pretty darn good fit. I mean, him with Jaw, with Jaren Jackson, with Desmond Bain, Marcus Smart off the bench. He's going to be getting those lobs. He's going to be scoring. He's going to be getting his rebounds and blocking the ball. So I think it's a good pick there. Hated on pick, but undeservedly. Um,
I think if Donovan Clingan went to Charlotte, it would be kind of similar because we got a
okay.
very like electric mobile guard in LaMelo for Charlotte, and then also John Moran obviously for Memphis, and then a big guy just kind of boom right there. He's not gonna move. He's not gonna catch lobs like flying out of the gym on a fast break, but he's just gonna be there and like Boban that one time in Houston where he got a couple minutes and whatnot. He just sat there and got the ball. I think that would be a really cool kind of similarity to see those two teams with a really mobile, agile guard and then just a brick wall statue like tower of a guy at the five. I don't know. That would be
I
cool.
agree, but instead they picked Salon.
Yep.
And so next we're gonna move on to you also briefly mentioned him, Patrick. Nikola Topic was picked by the Thunder. I don't hate the pick. I mean, before it was announced that he tore his ACL, he was being looked at as a top 3 pick,
Mhm.
and they got him out of the top 10, and he's not going to play his rookie season, but neither did Chet, and look how good he did. Definitely different type players, we know that. But he will have a year to, even though he's not going to be playing, to learn behind some of the vets. He's going to be learning behind Shea for a year and their staff. I think it's a good pick. Any disagreements?
Patrick, you
I,
could go for it because I know you.
I said I like the pick. I think just with their situation, it makes a lot of sense. And people come back from torn ACLs all the time now.
They
Sports
do.
science is different. And Sam Presti, just in general, is on a hot streak. He's some sort of wizard in a sense right now in the front office. He's probably one of the most respected individuals making decisions. So it's tough for me on the outside to question it. And look, how many players are they going to end up wanting to pay, having to pay with the new CBA as it goes down the line? So they're gonna just take some swings, and if a guy really, really ends up being that player, then he'll be in the fold in that new core in the really, really young Thunder team. If not, then whatever. They
Right.
missed on a pick, or they didn't really invest a ton of time in it. I mean, we're gonna see over the next few years them just either get out of drafts, trade these picks before it even happens, or take a swing like this. So I think this is just going to be par for the course over the next few years for the Thunder.
Well, and there's just something about Nikola
Yeah.
we have Nikola Jokic, stud. We have Nikola Jovic, stud, even more of a
Real
stud.
nice guy.
Yeah,
I met him real quick.
really
Yeah.
tall guy.
He's super nice. Yeah.
I like him for the Heat. But Andrew, your time to shine. Tell me about the Lakers and Dalton Connect falling all the way to 17. Tell me
I don't
about
know. I don't know if we've seen a cooler nickname for a rookie.
it. Me
Like
neither.
I just can't
I
remember
love
one.
it.
Like there's probably a decent amount, but I can't remember one. Connect Four. I like the pick. I really do. I know he's old. He's old. He's 2 years older than me. I know he's old.
Same
There
age
are
as Jaime
things in
Jaquez was last year.
there you go. So yeah, he's older as a prospect in the draft, which is one of the bigger factors as to why he fell. Another thing is that outside of shooting, if we're being real, there's not much contribution defensively in terms of playmaking. But if you're the Lakers, that's not what you need. You need shooting.
And you guys are
LeBron's
in win
basically
now
your
mode, so the age doesn't matter.
exactly. Yeah.
I think the age adds to it. They want him to be older
Right.
to be ready.
More
I'm being
experience.
serious. Like they want him to be ready. They're in win now mode.
Is this a yes Diddy moment? I'm kidding. But yeah, like he brings a lot of shooting to the floor. He was exactly 40+% from three in his final year at Tennessee. Obviously, not much like going on in his first couple years in college. But once he got to Tennessee, he got those good minutes. I think that was a great pickup for the Lakers, especially at 17. On the other hand, Ronnie at number 55. I like, okay, he's gonna be a work in progress. He's probably just like, picked up for the name, whatever. But he's not gonna get significant minutes in his rookie year. I don't think. If he does, then I don't know. LeBron's really just Lethanos. But maybe he gets some minutes in garbage time some game or something. He's probably gonna get stuck into the G League. But I think this is obviously more for like the storyline, the precedence of it. Something I read about that could have happened is the Celtics had the pick right before the Lakers, 54. If the Celtics got Bronny and said, ransom, give me Austin Reeves, bro,
Would they have
I
done it, or would
swear,
have
so many
LeBron have just
fireworks
left?
right in this Publix. I would have sent them all to Boston. I don't know. I don't know, but that would have been such a, I don't want to say the word. That would have been such a bad person move. Um,
It'd be a
like,
Celtic
dude,
thing to do.
it would be such a Celtic thing to do, wouldn't it?
Hate
And
them.
especially if you just won the championship and you're just doing it just to get under people's skin, like, nah. But
Brad
that would have
Stevens.
been crazy. But like besides how the Lakers did in the draft and whatnot, it's super cool to see Bron and Bronny on the same team now. First father-son duo in the NBA playing at the same time. Super cool. But yeah, I think in terms of what the Lakers actually need and got Dalton Connect, I think it's pretty cool. Now we just need to get DeJounte Murray. If only like he didn't get already traded.
Yeah, if only. Um, all right, so Lakers did kind of kill it. And then we have one other team to talk about, the Utah Jazz. They just took best player available, it seemed like. They took Cody Williams at 10, and then they took Isaiah Collier, who fell. I don't quite know why, just because he's not very versatile, I guess. He's kind of one-dimensional, but they took him, and I think it's a good pick. He's going to fit pretty well next to Colin Sexton. And then they were the ones who capitalized on the fall of Kyle Filipowski in the second round, at the top of the second round. They like those are three huge names, three easily first round potential names, and they got them all. So I think they killed this draft as well. Definitely a candidate for best team in this draft. But that's all the time we have for talking about the NBA draft. The three of us, we're still going to be here after the commercial break talking about NBA free agency, so don't go anywhere.
Jack, buddy, why are you here?
I don't really understand why I'm here. I got called a delusional fan. I just don't understand why I'm delusional if I think Kirk Cousins had the best mustache in the league.
Well, Jack, buddy, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but I don't think anybody looks cool in handlebars.
But they're back, man. They're back.
They're not. They're not. Sometimes you just got to face the hard truth. It's right there in front of you. All these people, they're calling you delusional, but sometimes you got to worry about, am I projecting? Is it me? And in this
Let me
case,
tell you something, bud. It could never be me. Anything I say is factual and truth, and that's why the Vikings are going 16-1 this year.
organization, you have to look at your roster and say, I've had Kirk O'Duggins for 6 years. Maybe it's time to move on.
There is no moving on from Kirk Thuggins and Justin Jefferson.
Do you think that maybe this all started just because of a little disappointment?
Nothing has started. This is how I live, and I am not delusional.
And we are back talking free agency. The draft was kind of crazy, but free agency has been just as eventful. We're just going to get right into it. Patrick, tell me about Paul George to the 76ers. But before you do that, the 76ers made some other moves. They extended Tyrese Maxey. They signed Andre Drummond to back up Joel Embiid, which is slightly confusing because they have Paul Reed, but whatever, it's a cheap contract. And they also re-signed Kelly Oubre, but they brought in Paul George. So tell me about that. I don't
Wait,
think I'm a fan.
did you say that that they let Tobias Harris walk too, right? In
They
that?
they did.
Yeah.
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 And
So,
you know who gave him a bag again? The Detroit Pistons.
oh my God, somebody revisit the conversation that I had with Tyler Brownrigg on maybe like the first or second episode of HTF Summer, and we got into an argument about how like the Pistons were getting screwed by the draft
I
lottery.
hosted that. That
Yeah.
was so fun.
And I was saying that they just kept getting screwed because they suck at the front office. I think that might
They're doing
be
it to
another reason.
themselves.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think Sixers fans are just, they could have thrown a parade. on the level of a championship parade
I'm
for Tobias
surprised they
Harris.
didn't.
Yeah, uh so as far as the Sixers are concerned, I'm actually a big fan of getting Paul George. And that's going to sound like a little bit of a shock because of what I'm about to say about Paul George. But I think you're in a win now mode, and I know that doesn't excuse teams making terrible decisions or paying aging players like a ton of money and, end up having to pay the luxury tax, especially in the new CBA. Like, you don't want to end up making terrible moves. But I think with Joel Embiid right now, it's a win now situation. So why not go ahead? Plus, you got, like you said, Tyrese Maxey there long term. So at the end of the day, I think you'll have a future after Paul George is potentially retired at the end of this deal. Now, as far as Paul George, I don't know why he decided to essentially run it back. He, over the last 5 years, has dealt with injuries of his own, but injuries to his fellow star. And it's essentially taken away the last 5 years of his career. He's had no impact on the league as far as who's winning the championship because you can pretty much count on Kawhi Leonard tearing some ligament in his knee by the first round or the second round of the playoffs. Now, what can you count on Joel Embiid to do when the playoffs roll around? Probably not play as many games as you wish he would.
Or be
So
there
he's
at all.
just, yeah, or even at all. And essentially, that was the story of the Sixers this past year. I mean, yeah, they ran into a really good Knicks team, but still, like at the end of the day, he's essentially doing exactly, um, he's just running back the same exact situation that he had with the Clippers. And I think that's really disappointing, especially when you look on the other side and he could have went to the Magic. He could have
Yeah.
went to a team that could have revitalized his career. Doesn't have any injury history whatsoever about any of their main guys, and they probably would have been the second best team in the East, I think, with the addition of Paul George.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
No, definitely
New
over the Knicks.
York, New York.
I mean, hey, the Knicks have got a good team. The Knicks got a good team, but in that potential series, you have probably three of the top four
But were
players.
you talking better than Boston? Because I think,
No, no,
oh,
no.
No, he said second or like one of the, but like
Yeah,
I
I said
think
second. I
it's
thought I
kind of
said second.
consensus. Like we're fighting for second place. I do want to ask you though, Patrick. Um, Paul George going to the Magic. That obviously that would have been sick, especially for us. Like we get to see Paul George in our backyard. But would he like? How would that kind of fit with the dynamic of obviously you want Paolo playing? He's probably going to be your four. But Franz Wagner, he took a big leap. Would you kind of sneak one of them in at the two, or like
I
have
think
to
he
Yeah,
play the
bench
two.
someone?
yeah,
I
I
know Paul
think.
George can play the two, but like recently he's been more of a three.
Yeah,
I
I
get.
think you
I don't
can
know.
slot Franz at the two. He played enough minutes as like that in the previous years, but yeah, no, I don't love like the fit, like as far as just the size, because I don't really want to play Paulo as a small ball four, or even Franz. But I see Franz more like out on the perimeter. He's certainly not a bruiser, so that's why I said he would end up going to the two. Um, I would say that their front court log jammed anyway right now, and they're in talks to trade Wendell Carter Jr. potentially to the Pelicans. They're interested. I think that probably wouldn't happen if they were to get Paul George, or if they would have gotten Paul George. They probably would have had to keep him, so they're not like 7 feet across the board, but they would have like probably looked close-ish to what the Timberwolves kind of have. The Timberwolves are super tall on the forward and the center positions, but they would have needed like a point guard that can distribute better. They would have, I think, made a lot of different moves if they would have got Paul George. I don't think they would have re-signed everybody.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Yeah.
So with the Magic on our minds, they did sign KCP, Kentavious Caldwell Pope. I think a good signing, but like, just from hearing some of the people at HTF, because I'm not a Magic fan, they were looking for a star, as everyone is, as the Heat are, my team. And so I feel like just getting another good player, like, does that really do a whole lot for the Magic?
I think what the
Because Paul
Magic
George
need
would have
right
done a
now,
lot, but KCP's not Paul George.
I think it fits a little bit more with regards to who they have now. They needed a good spot up shooter, the Magic did. And that's something KCP brings to the table, as well as a team that's so young, so developing, just got first rounded, but nonetheless made it to 7 games with the Cavs. Someone like KCP with 2 championships in the last 4 years now, um, decent veteran experience. He knows what he's doing. He could bring a lot to the table in terms of mentorship, just that veteran presence that the Magic could use. I think it's a good pickup just for that. But for something like, like if we're talking about stardom, KCP obviously does not come to mind, but I think he's a good pickup for the Magic. It wasn't
Yeah,
like a waste of money by
no
any
doubt.
means. You mentioned you wanted a star. If you're the Magic, he's not that star. He's not that guy. But I still think he brings a lot to the table for Orlando.
Yeah. And then another move that I actually hadn't planned on talking about because admittedly I forgot, but you briefly mentioned the Pelicans. They got DeJounte Murray in a trade with the Atlanta Hawks, and I wasn't a huge fan of the return that the Hawks got. They got Dyson Daniels, who is a good player, but and then
He
they got
is
Larry Nance and a couple firsts. I just how do you let DeJounte Murray go and you don't get Brandon Ingram in return like it was rumored? Like the Pelicans, in my opinion, fleeced that. Ezra had, something else
Ezra
to
was
say
going
about it.
crazy. Ezra was going
So I
crazy.
just kept quiet because, he didn't influence me, but I think that the Hawks lost that trade.
I think the Hawks were probably destined to lose the DeJounte Murray trade for about the last year or so, however long he has been rumored to be in a trade. They just couldn't get it done. They couldn't get any sort of trades done. And I think this shows what their return was looking like at the trade deadline. So I'm not really too mad. Like, yeah, it's unfortunate that you don't get Brandon Ingram because I would have loved to see like Ingram with Trae Young and then like, maybe Alex
There's
Sarr
so
would
many
have been wanted to
wings if
play
that's the
with
case.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just not the reality of it. I do think that they chose the right guy to trade, in my opinion. I do think the franchise guy would be Trae Young, so I think they have that at least. And
For
also,
sure,
I think
yeah.
now the Pelicans, they can fall back on a lot more reliable talent. I love the way that they decided to take matters into their own hands. I just talked about teams defined by injury. Their previous years and seasons have been defined by Zion Williamson just not
Hmm.
being able to stay on the court, just not having enough built around him to really just like hold the fort while he was gone. Now I think they have that. And with him, I think that I don't know what their ceiling looks like in the West, so I'm not going to say nothing crazy, but
It's a
I
good
think
They're
Western
looking
Conference.
good.
I think it's an actual team though that you got to mess with. Like I could see him in the second round easily getting out of the first.
The
Depending on the matchup, like yeah,
Depending on the matchup, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not taking him over certain teams, but I'm taking him over a few teams, and that's for
The
sure, at least.
NBA is at a peak right now because the Western Conference, as always, is stacked, and the Eastern Conference,
Just got
there's
so
some
much
super
better.
teams. Like
Yeah.
it just pains me as a fan of not one of those super teams to like just to watch basketball because you look at the Knicks, like we mentioned, the Celtics, the 76ers, there's just such stacked teams.
The
It's
Knicks, the
sad.
Knicks are just like a
Power
playground on
friendship.
steroids right now.
Yeah.
Just best
Okay.
friends.
So, Andrew, tell me a little bit about the Mavs, what they've done. They got Klay Thompson. I'm sure you might have liked to see him in a Lakers jersey. Maybe he chose not to do that because, that you guys just drafted Dalton Connect. I don't know. But, the trade, it ended up being a sign and trade for the Warriors.
Mm.
The Hornets, random third team in the trade, got Josh Green, and then the Warriors got 2 second-round picks, one from each the Hornets and the Mavs, and the Mavs obviously got Klay Thompson. So tell me a little bit about that move.
Yeah, so just to get it out of the way, I feel really bad for Josh Green. He did do a lot in the finals, especially as like that second option guy to run the ball, brought a lot of energy to that secondary unit. Sad to see him go to the Hornets.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, might as well have gone overseas. But Klay Thompson in a Mavericks uniform. First of all, the fall off of the dynasty is crazy, but that's besides the point. I think this is someone that the Mavericks desperately needed. Luka was looking to, do his thing, drive into the paint, kick it out to somebody reliable, and make it. PJ Washington sold. Oh my goodness, he sold. He couldn't make a single shot for his life. He missed. I think he went like 0 for 7. We talked about it just a couple weeks ago on the show. 0 for 7 from 3 in the last game. He was garbage. Nobody was making threes. Not Luka, not Kyrie, not PJ. I think Derrick Jones Jr., who is now a Clipper, which hopefully we'll talk about later, the Clippers. Nobody was making threes for Dallas. Klay Thompson, he's a sharpshooter. It's just so hard to remember that like the last sample that we got of him this season being 0 for 10 in an elimination game. And I think the play-in. Hopefully that doesn't happen as a Maverick because then it's just like it's all hell breaks loose in Dallas. But in terms of what the team needs, roster suiting and everything. I like it. I'm just kind of concerned, or not concerned, but like it just comes into my mind. Is Clay gonna play the three, or is
Think
Luca?
so.
Because Luca started off as a small forward, and then like playmaking developed and everything. Now he got bumped to the one, and then they got Kyrie. He's usually a one as well, but he
And
developed as a two
then
in Brooklyn with James
Washington at the
Harden.
4 and Gafford at the 5, Lively off the
Something like
bench.
that. It's kind of a small team.
Is.
So that's a little bit concerning, I guess. But Klay Thompson's been known to be like a 3-and-D guy, more three, obviously. Um, but yeah, I like the pickup for Dallas. But obviously, I would have loved to see him in a Lakers uniform. Unfortunately, he would have been in the same state, which means the taxes are the same, which means the taxes are garbage. Garbage. Like, my goodness. So I don't blame him for, getting a good bag and actually getting to keep it. But yeah, Klay
Yeah.
Thompson is a
All
Maverick.
right. We have a couple more moves that I want to speed run through before we talk about our final two teams. So first is going to be the Thunder. The rich get richer. The number 1 seed this past year. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein, and then they absolutely fleece the Bulls, who
The
is one of those two
Bulls.
teams that I want to talk about in a little bit. They give them Josh Giddey straight up for Alex Caruso. Just highway robbery. This is unfair to the rest of the league. And for the Western Conference, I feel bad because that Thunder team is scary. We all said this past year, yeah, they got the 1 seed. Yeah, they're a good team, but it's not this year. It could be this year now, though.
I
They
think it
needed
could
time
be.
to develop. So, very scary team. And then also, we talked about briefly the Pistons got Tobias Harris, just a needle moving move, not really, but and then CP0 rings, Chris Paul signed with the Spurs. Um
I like it.
I like it too.
Like, for Wemby, like, I like it. Chris Paul might.
Mentor
Is
Stephon
he gonna win a
Castle.
championship?
Nope.
No. But I like it.
Right. Yeah, I
Short
think
term,
he's the vet
one
that
night
they need
stand.
because it's a young team. Um, and then Jonas Valanciunas, the Wizards have just been killing this offseason, in my opinion. I mean, they're nowhere near competing for the next even like 2, maybe even 3 years,
They
but
just
they've
went up.
made some good moves.
They just went up one place in the rankings at the end of the season. They're now
Yeah.
the 13th seed locked.
Yes, so they
Goodness.
signed Jonas Valanciunas, and then all right. So first team that I want to talk about quickly is the Clippers. Andrew, I'm gonna let you cook with that. They did extend James Harden. What else did they do?
So they extended James Harden. Gave him. I actually, do you know how much his contract was? I don't exactly remember
Not off the
because it
top.
wasn't anything crazy from
Right.
recollection. I think
No, it
Patrick's
was
looking
it was
up,
like
but
a 2 or 3 year,
something like that. Yeah. But there wasn't much of a market for James Harden. The only other team
2 year
that comes to
70
mind.
million. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
What was
kind of
it?
crazy still. 2 year
3
70.
for 70. Oh, 2 years 70. Excuse
2
me.
years 70. Okay, so 35.
Yeah.
Like, considering the other signings that are going out east or
Not
out
awful,
northeast
but
in Massachusetts, like that's not bad. But yeah, there wasn't much of a market for him outside of like briefly the Lakers, just because LeBron was like, "Oh, I'll take a pay cut, give me a better guard," like kind of thing. But it like we weren't pursuing Harden by any means. I don't hate it. Harden's a good player. He's gonna get you like 20 points, 10 assists, like basically on whatever team he's on, unless he's prime 2019. By the way, I was up till 2 a.m. last night watching prime Harden clips, like
okay.
whatever. But yeah, so there's that. The Clippers. What threw me off about the Clippers, not even with the whole Paul George saga and the fact that the Clippers blamed the NBA and like the whole new like contract formatting and stuff for Paul George leaving, getting KPJ out of prison ball. I didn't even know he was a free agent. I didn't know he was apparently he was like overseas getting paid like minimum wage to ball because ball is life, I guess. But he's not a guy that you look past his off-court issues to sign. Like, all due respect, this is not John Morant. He's not putting up KPJ is not putting up 28 points. He's not putting up 8 assists. He's nothing crazy. He's a good player. He was a good player before like, everything else happened. Let me take that back. He was a good asset to a team before
Does he
everything
still
else
have
off
that
court
little like
happened.
Star Wars Padawan little braid thing coming out of the back of his head?
I didn't know he had one.
Yeah,
I didn't
when
know he
he
had
was on
one.
the Cavs. I don't know.
I don't know. I really did like his like play style and everything before his off court stuff happened. But for the Clippers, like there's not much you can do to justify that. I don't get it. Like on top of the fact that you just re-signed your guard, KPJ is a guard. Like what's going on? So there was just that. The Clippers, they're probably one of the bigger losers in free agency as well. Obviously, the Warriors, we mentioned it earlier. They lost Chris Paul for basically nothing. Technically traded away Jordan Poole for nothing. Um, but besides them, the Clippers have to be up there because what in the world were you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna need some of that.
Yeah. Some questionable moves for sure. Shout out Carlo Jimenez, if you know, you know. Um, and so final team we're gonna talk
Radio
about.
broadcaster, Andrew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking Hernan Gomez.
No, but last team we're going to talk about is the Chicago Bulls.
Yes.
The arguably like they're right up there with the Pistons, at least in my opinion, for most poverty franchise. Um, you know,
Ooh.
it was announced today, as it's announced every single year, that DeMar DeRozan, his favorite team that he wants to go to is the Miami Heat. I'm going on air doubting that it's not going to happen. I really hope it does, of course, because I think that is still a good move, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then we mentioned that they got Josh Giddey for just Alex Caruso. Like
It,
that
this
that's it.
it seems like that was the final straw
It
for
was.
DeMar.
That's
So
that's what the
hopefully
reports
it
are saying.
was.
And
I hope he goes to Miami just for the sake of seeing my Pookie in red.
yeah, exactly. And last two players that are worth mentioning is one, Lonzo Ball is hoping, like the reports are that he's hoping to still return to basketball. You know, I'm hoping for the best for him. And then last
100%.
player is Zach LaVine. Historical
Oh,
fall off, unfortunately. I saw something yesterday that said they are trying to trade him and a first round pick for basically nothing, like bench player material, just because he's owed $50 million a year next year. I
Insane.
wish
Yeah.
that the Heat had the salary cap for that, because he's still a talented player, plus you get a first round pick. But like teams are not biting just because they don't have the money for that. Patrick, like what's wrong with the Bulls? What
Well, okay, so today I've been almost like an NBA GM front office apologist, and I've been saying, look, I think I see why they're doing this, or they, at least if you find a direction. I'm not the kind of person who's going to say that the Josh Giddey, Alex Caruso trade is so bad for the Bulls, but I think everything else is getting really bad. I'm surprised that they haven't really found any suitors for the Zach LaVine trade.
the
Or to get
Warriors
off of
turned
his
something
contract.
down.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think I'm surprised if they were ever picky, but yeah, sure, it's probably biting them in the butt now because like if you're trying to send him away to another team with a first round pick, obviously you're in shambles. I think Alex Caruso, he's kind of like a closer in baseball. Like if you have a really good closer in baseball or like a really good like setup man, I should say, probably setup man. Uh and you're a bad team, it doesn't really do much for you because he's not setting up wins. He's not setting up anything for your closer. So you trade him to a team that's competitive. I think that's kind of like where Alex Caruso is right now. I mean, yeah, he's a good role player, but he is an even better or a more valuable piece on a really good team. So I see
Yeah.
why like they traded him because he wasn't exactly winning them games, and they just are like, hey, maybe Josh Giddey can have a better year than he did last year and keep, progressing. But like this is getting to be a mess. Also, though, at least they have Kobe Williams, and I
I was
think
just
it's
gonna
kind
say.
of and I think it's just kind of ironic that they've given up on some of the young players in the past. So hopefully, they never really like gave up on him. But I just think it's ironic because now we're seeing Lowry Markkinen like in trade talks, Wendell Carter Jr. These are guys that actually played valuable minutes elsewhere outside of the Bulls organization, and maybe if they had like kept some of those guys, they would have been able to build a team around uh DeMar DeRozan. But the Zach LaVine contract is just killer, and that's why bringing out the Brinks truck isn't always the best option. And I think it's also why the Clippers were like, "Hey, we're not going to pay Paul George 4 years. We're going to stand strong," because you could end up digging yourself into a hole.
Yeah.
Bulls are going to be in the lottery for the next 3-4 years at least.
Oh yeah. Probably the only good moves I think that the Bulls made this offseason was they did extend Patrick Williams and then drafting Modest Buzelis. I think he's a good player. He was worthy of going at that spot. And then, they do still have Ayo DeSumo and Kobe Williams. Like they're not, and if they keep DeMar DeRozan, I don't I think he'll demand a trade or maybe just sit because he really did not like that Josh Giddey move. But like, it's not the crazy thing is it's not the world's worst team by any means. It's just that front office doesn't know what they're doing. But with that being said, NBA talk is over. Thank you guys so much for joining. This was a blast. We have one more segment, a fun segment too. So
We're gonna
stay tuned
fight.
for that. Spoiler alert. Stay tuned for that. Happy 4th of July again to you both. And yeah, stay tuned.
So, Tyler Brownrigg. It says in my notes you're a Oklahoma fan.
That is correct.
So, let me ask you, bud. Is Texas back?
All right, I put on a brave face a lot, but this year, I'm really scared that they are, man. Okay, they just beat Alabama. They're gonna be top 4 in the rankings. And last year, they beat us 48-0.
Yeah.
It was humiliating. We're the Oklahoma Sooners. We were the best ever. We were talk of the town. We had Baker, Kyler, and Jalen 3 years in a row. And now, are we good? I don't know. We haven't won a national title since 2000. We're number 18, I think, and nothing matters, dude.
Sometimes we build up these walls thinking they're impenetrable. But sometimes you have to knock these walls down to build up bigger and stronger ones. And you got to be tough through that. It's hard being an Oklahoma fan at this time, but grass is always going to be greener on the other side of the hill, buddy.
Is it? I cannot live through a Texas national championship. I can't. I'll never recover.
Do you want to talk about Lincoln Riley?
What'd you just say to me?
I just want to know if you want to talk about Lincoln Riley.
And we are back for the final segment. We're going to be talking about some fights. So this episode was 4th of July, free agency and fights. I'm joined by Anya Garibashvily and back from retirement, Jared Fox. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk about UFC again.
Good. Jared?
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. Can't wait to get started.
All right. So Jared, tell me a little bit about this recent UFC 303. Why did everyone seem to back out?
The UFC has been kind of stale since UFC 300, which is kind of disappointing. As a lot of people know, this fight was supposed to be the Conor McGregor-Michael Chandler fight, which we've been waiting for over 2 years now. And it got moved because Conor McGregor broke his pinky toe. And so now it's going to be at least another 3 months until we see that fight, which is really unfortunate because, as much as, how washed Conor is right now, he's still kind of the face of the UFC because whenever he fights, everybody is tuned in. Everybody's paying for the pay-per-view. People are getting together. It's a whole event. So it's so tragic that he hasn't been able to fight in over 2 years now. But, we'll see it eventually. But also Jamal Hill was supposed to fight on this card. He was supposed to fight Khalil Roundtree. That got canceled. He was supposed to fight Carlos Ulberg. That got canceled. And then he was completely off the card entirely. So that really stinks. And then up to literally during the actual card, Brian Ortega against Diego Lopez. They were supposed to be the co-main event, and Brian Ortega, within about 2 or 3 hours before his fight, pulls out due to him being sick. I mean, that's just it's unfortunate. Brian Ortega is still at the top of his game, still trying to make that title run, and the fact that he had to pull out is really unfortunate. But good news is we could still be seeing that fight at the Sphere. So once that event comes around, Dana White has already promised that Diego Lopez will be fighting on that card per his request. So still super excited to see that. But it does kind of stink that we had to see so many fights get canceled, especially last minute too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's super unfortunate. But I mean the Sphere, that's gonna be crazy. I mean, that venue is just ridiculous. We just saw it with the NHL draft. All right, so now we kind of get we kind of have a little bit of an understanding as to why we really only had one fight that was like, whoa, you know? So, Anya, tell me about that one fight. Tell me who won. It was Yuri Prohaska versus
Alex Poitin Pereira.
yes, thank you, brain fart.
Yes.
Go for it.
So Alex Pereira, he was defending his title for the light heavyweight division for the UFC, which those guys, they have a bit more mass to them than most of the divisions that I like to watch, like bantamweight and strawweight. So you got a lot of heavy hitters. But Alex Pereira, he, as listed on ESPN, he is actually more of a kickboxing style, which we definitely saw in the fight. He was a lot more calm and composed as compared to Yuri, who, while he was landing a lot of good hits, he looked lost in the fight personally. Like he couldn't really grapple Pereira really well. He got hits, but it didn't seem to make an impact on Pereira while during those fights. And you see it where Alex Pereira in the second round, just a little past the halfway point, just knocks Yuri Prohaska out. And that's how the fight ended. And Alex Pereira kept his title.
All right. I mean, it was certainly an entertaining fight. It just obviously unfortunate that a lot
Yeah.
of people dropped out.
Yeah. Yeah, there were definitely a lot of fun PR moments, especially leading up to the fight. Pereira is rumored to use shaman magic before his fights, as you can see with
Okay.
him doing the archer pose during his walkout. So in one of the interviews, Yuri tells the interviewer, he's like, I asked him not to use any magic. Hopefully he doesn't, because he also has this really deep appreciation for samurai culture back
Oh,
in
okay.
Japan. So that's why he has that bun instead of the braids or the short haircut like most other UFC fighters.
Very interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I mean that's kind of it for UFC, but that's not it for us. We have a bit of a fun idea. So since we were just talking about UFC and fighting, kind of going with the whole 4th of July free agency fighting theme for the show, I've compiled 5 matchups between hitting the field members. If we were to do a hypothetical fight, who would
Oh
win?
God.
And so the three of us are not on it. We are not on the card for this fight. So there's no bias. But our first fight, the main event, actually, perhaps most even, is going to be between our two previous members who you just saw for the past 45 minutes, Patrick Previty and Andrew Montana. Who is someone break it down? I don't have betting odds, but who's likely to win this fight? They're similar height. Patrick is
Patrick does work out though.
yes.
That's what I was gonna say. Is Patrick? I don't know if you guys follow him on Instagram, but the guy's a hunk. So I got Patrick at about -200
Okay.
on my
I
odd
think
sheet.
I think I'd have to agree with you. I don't exactly know how betting odds work, but I definitely do think that between Andrew and Patrick, it would be
Do we
Patrick.
think potentially Andrew could be a little bit quicker though?
I don't think it would make a difference.
Okay.
Andrew's an athlete. I'll give him that.
Is
Andrew's definitely an athlete. So
intramural, he's a baller. And
intramural all-star, some are
If we're
saying.
looking at this as UFC,
You're right,
speed definitely is key, but really it's knowing where to hit and having the strength behind it. And Patrick has at least one of those.
yeah. All right. So we're giving this one to Patrick. Next fight. I wanted to include myself in this one, but I didn't at the same time. I don't like fighting. But we have the Battle of Tylers. We have Tyler Brownrigg and Ty Patton. Now,
This one's not
I don't know
fair.
if you guys have seen Main Show and Combine, but this one might be slightly one-sided. Absolutely no shade to Tyler, but I had to give Ty a fair opponent, you know?
I mean, is it? Because I think Ty Patton's probably in the quadruple digits as a favorite. No offense to Tyler Brownrigg, but he's kind of fighting out of his weight class here. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
think Ty Patton brings him to the ground and just, ground and pounds him until he taps or until
Do
the
we
ref stops the fight.
do we think though, Anya, that, Tyler, he's a technician. Does he have anything up his sleeve?
It's a possibility, but this just boils down to the difference between how different weight classes fight. A lot of the lighter weights, which Tyler Brownrigg would most likely be in, they tend to be more decisive, which takes a lot more training. With the heavyweights, you can just throw a punch and it'll knock someone out, even if they're the same weight as you.
Okay, so since we're talking about totally fair fights, our next one is Andrew Gregg,
Okay.
newcomer to HTF this year, absolute stud, and Dario Aria. He's kind of a smaller stature. Who do we think's gonna win this fight?
Are we serious? I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, honestly, I think we should have done the Dario versus Ty Patton. Now that would be
It
the
would.
fight. The fight
Uh,
makers would be making some bread on that one. But I got Dario here. I mean, I'm sorry, I love you, Andrew Gregg, but I mean
don't we all?
Dario could legitimately fight in the UFC, I think, and actually be successful.
He's
So
like
it's
6'5" and absolutely shredded.
yeah.
Absolute
So.
unit. Do you agree, Anya?
I have to agree, but just to give some points towards Andrew Green, he is very close with Patrick, who we did say would win. So in this hypothetical, I feel like those two would train together, and I feel like he'd at least have a decent shot at least maybe getting around.
I
I'm
like
not saying
it.
he'd win, but he'd definitely put up a fight.
Yeah, sure.
That's a good point. That is a good point. They would probably be training together, and he would get some secret sauce from Patrick Previty. So that was a pretty good point right there.
Absolutely. And so our fourth, not final, but our fourth fight is going to be between two absolute hitting the field best friends. We have Frankie Noble and Leah Hackett. This one I have no opinions on. I don't know. Pretty even fight, I think.
When I saw this fight, I was thinking Frankie might be the favorite, but I'm gonna go with the underdog here, and I'm gonna take Leah. I think she's kind of a silent assassin. I'm not gonna lie. I think that she doesn't talk a whole lot, but when she does, she's ready to brawl, man. So I'm taking Leah here, and at whatever the plus odds are, she's gonna be my sleeper pick on my parlay, and I got her.
Love to hear it.
I'm definitely gonna go with the favorite, Frankie, just because I know how aggressive hockey can get. She's a huge hockey fan. I feel like she's got that drive and motivation behind her. So I'm gonna go with Frankie.
I love Anya's reasoning. Very smart. And then we have our final fight. We have Mr. Executive Producer Mason Myers versus John Warner.
I got Mr. John Warner in the first round. I got John Warner first round. Listen, the guy's related to Fred Warner, all-pro NFL linebacker.
Yeah.
Get some tips from him with his training regimen, in the gym with his cousin, or however they're related. I got Mr. John Warner
Might be
first
brothers.
round knockout.
Might be
Brothers.
brothers.
That's right. They are brothers. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I said cousin. Kind of just distant because they're opposite sides of the country. But I got John Warner first round.
That's fair. Anya.
I don't know if I can agree with first round, but I definitely do agree with John Warner. I feel like Mason, he's just such a kind soul.
Yeah.
I can't see him I feel like he'd forfeit the fight, honestly.
Oh no. Could be. Definitely potential. I think my favorite fight out of that one would probably be Tyler and Ty. I think they would have that would be entertaining. But
Yeah.
thank you guys for coming on. This was super fun show. Have a great rest of your 4th of July. And next week, Matthew Bracker will be here to talk about the MLB All-Star break. That's going to be a fantastic show. So stay tuned. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you for watching.